Wu.
Thank you, Chair. Welcome, Mr. Carney. And I think we too would be very happy to have had you here in person. I hope I'm not speaking out of turn in saying that we will look forward to having you in person.
I think we did offer that
too long.
invitation.
Did we? Okay. Well,
it's my confusion. I apologize.
No,
Chair,
not at all, not at all. I'm really glad you started your presentation with a recollection of the recent events in the UK. Which must serve as a terrifying case study for politicians, but also perhaps a conundrum for serious policy thinkers who are looking for policy space to achieve the same objectives that the former Prime Minister, well, she's still the Prime Minister Truss, was trying to achieve. You know, a supply side response through the tax code, if I can put it very crudely. My question to you is where you see the policy space for supply side responses that can lift the trend rate of growth, particularly in industrialized countries, including Canada, that have seen stagnating wage growth and flatlining productivity growth for many, many years now. Whether through the tax code or fiscal policy, and whether that space is shrinking, and if the space is shrinking because of the perfect storm of different problematic economic events, could that loosen up in the near term so that we can have more space to do things that actually change the structure of the economy rather than simply managing a potential downturn?
Yes, well, Senator, it's a fantastic question, because I think the part of the tragedy here is the objective, which was to double the trend rate of growth to 2.5%. We would recognize that objective. This is something we would like to do as well. In fact, we should do. I mean, we have a little higher trend growth in the UK, but not much. I think it does bear looking at why the effort failed. And I'll just make a couple of points there and then go to what else we can do. I think one of the big reasons why it failed is it was half the story. They majored on tax cuts as the solution, as opposed to all the other hard work that's necessary to build productivity over time. And in fairness to them, I don't think they were blind to those issues. There's some glancing references to them in the mini budget, but for whatever political reason, and I think they recognize it was a miscalculation in retrospect, but they wanted to come out with the tax cuts and the big bang of that and the energy package, and then they were to do another budget at the end of November that would have filled in other aspects of it. But two things: one, it looked like it reduced the growth strategy to a trickle-down tax cut only strategy, which in and of itself, it's not a credible strategy for a 21st century economy, in my view. And then secondly, the scale of the spend, and most of the spend was for supporting households, as you know, with the energy package, but the scale of it, and it being uncosted, and actually the sort of the institutional structures, like their equivalent of the parliamentary budget office, being dismissed effectively, ignored, that totally undercut the credibility. They moved to a 7% of GDP deficit overnight. They already had a 7% current account deficit, and the numbers didn't add up. And then they acted like it didn't matter. I mean, I'm grossly simplifying, but all of those things conspired to put the pressure on them. And I think that's clear in retrospect. It seemed clear at the time as well, but it was definitely clear in retrospect. But the objective was right. There is a role for tax competitiveness in achieving these objectives. But if you're losing revenue, because on the tax side you have to think about which elements are funded, and in addition you have to use policy space, for example, in encouraging, as per the exchange with Senator Belmar, in terms of human capital investment. I'm a very strong believer that given the scale of the digital transformation, particularly, we need to institutionalize, have a series of measures that support mass mid-career retraining, reskilling for Canadians to give them the full opportunities of the new economy that's developing. And we have to be careful not to spend all our time on the short term but think about the medium and long term. So that's one element of it. I do think as well the exchanges on climate policy are critical because that could drive the chair, Senator Wallen, rightly referenced the scale of investment that's potentially there. And the only way we're going to unlock that is, as per Senator Gignac's point about getting our big pension funds and others investing in this, but with clear and actually relatively costless policy. If we have a policy, for example, on which we do on internal combustion engine vehicles after 2035, not having the sales of them, well, you work backwards from that and you see the investments that are necessary today. Yes, there is some support that's provided for them, but we will get return on that support many times over in terms of the competitiveness of our auto sector and so not just on the emission side. So we need the human and physical capital side alongside with tax competitiveness. We can't give up on tax competitiveness. Last point, if I may. One of the things that we used to spend a great deal of time on is the marginal effective tax rate for investment. And now that we have the corporate rate at a pretty competitive rate, I think that focus would more time on that would be well spent.
Thank you very much.